Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by World Anvil. There will be full spoilers for Black Adam. Alright, so I'm going to admit something right up front here and just get it out of the way. I was never really looking forward to this film because I do not like Dwayne Johnson as a movie star. That's not to say that I've never liked him in anything. I think he's well used in The Other Guys. I enjoy his strange performance in Southland Tales. And, you know, it was kind of fun when he turned up in Star Trek that one time. But in his movie star era, I think Johnson has almost always made the safest, most generic choices possible. Movies that don't challenge him as an actor at all, but usually aren't very impressive as action movies either. I guess I just don't like his taste in scripts, and I think he tends to turn in some very boring, very samey performances. Combine that with constant interviews where Johnson seemed more interested in comparing Black Adam and Superman's power levels than anything else, a conversation I find very boring, and I was just not all that excited for this one, even as I tried to go in with an open mind. So I'm pleasantly surprised to say that although I do have some pretty significant problems with the film that I'll get into, almost none of them have to do with Dwayne Johnson's actual performance. I think he's really solid in this movie. And there's some other positives here too, which I'll also try to get into. And I do think the film is much better than a lot of recent superhero misfires, like Thor: Love and Thunder or The Eternals. Still, I can't quite bring myself to fully get on board with it, mostly due to this script. But let me back up and start with the lead himself. It's never been a secret that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has seen Arnold Schwarzenegger's film career as a model to follow, trying to do a similar blend of action movies, adult comedies, and sappy, family-friendly comedies. And now, after seeing Black Adam, I think part of the reason Johnson has been trying to get this particular movie made for so long is that, in this character, he sees his Terminator 2. I doubt I'm the first to notice this because it just felt so obvious throughout the film, but the character's friendship with the young Amon felt like it was really trying hard to recreate the T-800 and John Connor dynamic, with a scary, blunt weapon, kind of befriending a kid and learning from them, even as they protect them. And I think Adam does a good job there. It helps that Black Adam is a very emotionally understated character for most of the film, which means that the actor can't lean into the more winky, eyebrow-raising shtick that he falls into so often. He gets some great deadpan moments, and bounces off the rest of the cast really well. I liked the character here, even if I think elements of his backstory were handled pretty clumsily, especially in the opening. If anything though, I think the script is unable to let him fully reach his potential. I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about this movie's strange relationship with its anti-hero lead. So much of the movie, and even the marketing, is focused on this idea that Black Adam isn't your grandpa's superhero, he's not a hero at all, he's brutal and he murders people. Okay, fine. Like, to anyone who has been reading comics for years, this won't exactly strike you as a novel concept. It's been a while that superhero stories go back to over and over again. But, you know, if it's an idea that's executed well, I don't have an issue with it being well-trodden territory. The thing is, I just don't think it is. There's a lot of tension between Black Adam and the Justice Society because of the deaths that he's causing, and for a minute the film treats this as a major sticking point between them. But it's shrugged off so quickly, and the violence is dismissed so flippantly, that it never feels like the movie actually commits to exploring this idea. Everyone Black Adam takes out here is either like a faceless goon or a cartoonishly cruel villain. So like, of course there's going to be some fun action to be had by seeing them flung into the sea, and the film basks in those moments. But to actually engage with this idea, if superheroes killing people is justified or not, there needs to be far more of an actual test of our characters' beliefs. There's no morally ambiguous moments here, no scenes where the viewer is asked to extend any humanity to those that Black Adam is mowing down. And I'm not saying that has to be a huge problem. I like over-the-top action movies as much as the next person. But if you're gonna center so much of this film around the conflict between Black Adam and Hawkman, that conflict needs to have stakes. There needs to be a lot more to Hawkman's arguments than, well, heroes don't do that. Find compelling situations that put both of their beliefs to the test in a meaningful way, where both characters have an understandable perspective on the situation and there is no easy, right answer. Instead, the film settles for Hawkman basically just telling Black Adam to stop doing cool superpower stuff against mostly faceless enemies. At the end of the film, Hawkman even signs off on Black Adam killing the villain, but that just feels completely weightless, because at that point the bad guy has transformed into like a Doom 2 demon who raises a skeleton zombie army. The movie tries to make this such a big part of Black Adam's character, but constantly takes the easy way out, never putting him in a situation where he could look truly evil or even completely unheroic. For all the film's talk about how its lead is not a hero, it never bothers to explore that in a way that would make the audience feel uncomfortable or conflicted for even a second. I mean, this character has seen his wife and son murdered right in front of him. That's a core part of his backstory here. Yet, that's never brought into the conversation about how he feels about taking the lives of others. Like, I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but really, I just thought that whole "I'm not a hero" through line of the film was such a lazy way to come off as edgy. And I think that's too bad, because they had a potentially really interesting conflict there with Hawkman that could have made this all so much more meaningful and character-driven. Speaking of Hawkman though, let's talk about the JSA. I really enjoyed Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. He looked great, his powers were fun, and Brosnan brought the gravitas in spades. I think this is a really underrated DC character that's been brought to the big screen very well. I would say Hawkman fits that category too. Aldous Hodge is a great actor, one that I've been watching since his days on NBC's Friday Night Lights all the way back in 2007. And although Hawkman usually doesn't get the fun moments here or dialogue, and often has to play the scold, I think he elevated the material. The other two on the team, Atom Smasher's whole shtick feels like something we've seen done better in a million other movies like this, both his humor and his power set. And Cyclone doesn't have enough screen time that's just focused on her to make all that much of an impact, outside of some cool looking powers. I have nothing against these two, but they feel like they could be almost entirely dropped from the movie without many changes to the story needing to be made, which usually isn't a good sign for two characters that are in the movie as often as these two. Also, if you're gonna bring in Henry Winkler for a cameo where he explains that Atom Smasher is using his old vintage costume, why not make it look actually vintage? Like, give it some Silver Age flair or something. That's a minor complaint obviously, but I don't know, why bring up how old his suit is multiple times and then just have him in a perfectly average looking modern costume? Going back to the positives though, I will say that overall, I did like this cast. I wouldn't mind seeing them again at all with a better script. I think they could all shine in these roles. Also, the score from Lorne Balfe really took me by surprise, giving Black Adam a nice distinctive theme and standing out a lot more than many recent blockbuster scores, which I really appreciated, even if a lot of the licensed needle drops were painfully obvious. Thankfully, there was never enough of those to actually overwhelm the film like what happened with the first Suicide Squad movie.
I think I'd better put you two on ice.
Overall, I thought this one was mostly okay. I'm not clamoring to see it again, and I do think it completely succumbs to the usual third act superhero movie problems. Like, really, did we need that skeleton army with zero personality? Who Black Adam barely fights, by the way. But, I had a decent enough time with it. It is a pretty far cry from what I know of the character from the comics, but granted, I mostly read very, very old Captain Marvel / Shazam comics, so maybe this lines up perfectly with his current iteration, I don't really know. But the twist that his son sacrificed himself to save him is more effective than I was expecting, and I really wish the marketing hadn't ruined it. And then there's the Superman of it all, which I guess it's nice to see Cavill back, but he really only says a sentence or two, so I don't think there's all that much to discuss there. It's kind of funny how tied into the lore of Shazam this thing is. Like, the movie doesn't try to hide that at all, but Johnson seems to have no interest in a crossover with the character. I kind of hope I'm wrong about that though, because I think those two could be a lot of fun in a movie together. A lot more so than Black Adam and Superman, honestly. But yeah, I thought this movie was mostly fine. It feels like superhero movie 101 stuff, but executed pretty well, aside from how much awkward exposition there is. I can't bring myself to feel too passionate about it either way, but it wasn't a terrible 2 hours at the movies. As much as I like to discuss the world of DC, designing your own can be a lot more rewarding. Take World Anvil. This is an incredible resource for writers crafting massive worlds, especially for role-playing games. like their feature whiteboard, which offers the perfect canvas for writers and artists, allowing you to organize everything super cleanly and making it easy to connect the story threads how you see fit with text articles, art pieces, and your own elements. Whether you're planning a creative D&D campaign or just trying to capture the texture and tone of your novel, World Anvil is useful for anyone with a big story idea who wants to see it executed. And if you're writing genre stuff, I think it's especially amazing, as it makes it super easy to create magic systems, family trees, and get across exactly the tone your story requires. So head to the link in the description and use code MIDNIGHT to get 40% off an annual membership.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.